Yo, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Hey, I am just gonna let everybody know. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Cool. Give it 2 more minutes. Checking in, team. Just gonna wait until a couple more people come on and then I'm gonna crack on. Oh, you can do all these filters as well. Should we go pumpkin vibe? Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah, I'm gonna do over this weekend. I'm gonna be trying to get into the Snapchat messages as much as I can. Got quite a few in there, but just need to crack on and cruise through. Hey. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the pumpkin vibe. There you go. Can you guys see that? Can you see the pumpkins? Spooky fog. Beam. Blush. Now we'll go spooky fog or pumpkin. I don't know if you can or you can't see it. Sweet. Okay. Look, guys, I just wanted to take... It'll be about 10, 15. We might go up to about 30 minutes, but I know that everybody's got mock exams coming up, so I wanted to talk about just some absolute basics that you need to be looking out for, especially for these new GCSEs. So to give you a bit of context, I don't know how much you know about when I did exams and how I kind of prepared and what I was to what I became. So at the beginning, I was very, very distracted, kind of class clown kind of guy, mucked around, got kicked out a lot, didn't really know how to do exams, didn't really know how to revise. And I suppose, I was 16, GCSEs came around, and I kind of said, wow, this is actually a pretty good opportunity for me to try for once and actually not just take the piss the whole time. So I started just changing things. I started changing my routine, my habits, the way I behaved in class, how I revised, how I went about an exam in general. Like before I did my GCSEs, the moment before the exam, I'd just be mucking around. Like I'd be just playing games, running around, not focusing, and it just wasn't. Of course, I wasn't going to be able to perform well when I was doing that. And then if I had a routine around it, and I just had my way of doing things, yeah, I could have fun outside of class, outside of the exam room, but I had this routine that for exams was going to get me a set of results that I was happy with and would get me to the next stage. So I just want to talk through a few quick pointers, and I've got a few things down here that I'm just going to run you through, so there's a bit of structure to it. And I want to keep it quite general, but if we're talking about specific GCSE subjects, I want to make sure that we talk about that in the DM afterwards, so this is kind of relevant for everybody here. I will name drop a few subjects and just give you examples of how you'd go about revising and doing well in exams in those subjects. So I think the place we want to kick off is mock exams. What's the purpose of them? The purpose of these, they're just learning, really. It's a learning curve. You shouldn't be going into them being like, oh, I need to do amazing in these. You don't. You need to figure out how good you are at doing these exams first and foremost. It's just a kind of a measure on how good you are. And the second thing you need to do is build up some level of foundational knowledge. So you have got a period of time between now and the mock exams where you can start doing some basic revision and building the basic building blocks to actually, when it comes to summer, have a decent set of knowledge ready to rock and roll and unload in the exam room and hopefully get a decent grade. So I think the first thing that you need to get your head around, this is just a testing session. It's just training. Chill. There's no need to get stressed or nervous over these at all. Relax. It's just an opportunity to learn and see where you're at. The second thing is this foundational knowledge. How are you going to build that up? How are you going to realize, okay, in each subject, these topics are the most important because they keep on coming up. They're in the past papers. They carry the most marks. You need to get good at identifying that. So my first tip to you would be, if you don't have your syllabus, your mark scheme, and your past papers down, if you don't have them for every subject, you need to get that. If you're at school at the moment, if you're going back to school after the weekend, that should be the first thing you ask your teachers. Just get that. You need that. Otherwise, you're just not going to know what the key topics are and where the most marks on the exam paper are. If you don't know those two things, you haven't got the base that you can then actually get into the high grade categories in. The next thing is exam technique. You want to be developing that and thinking about, right, I haven't done many exams before. I'm assuming a lot of you haven't. I know I hadn't when I was 16 or 15. And you got to figure out, right, what is my routine around this? Because routine, what it does is it allows you to build up some consistency about what you do. Look at it. Like, it just makes sense, right? You look at all the sports professionals. What do they do before a game? They warm up. What do they do afterwards? They cool down. I look at Rafa Nadal a lot as a tennis player. He's probably the most neurotic about his routine and how he does things. You see him with his water bottles. He's placing them all about in the specific way. You need to be the same about your exams. And almost, I bring up that example that I mentioned at the beginning again, where before the exam I was just mucking around. I didn't have my pre-exam routine where I'm looking through my flashcards, I'm maybe listening to a bit of music, and I'm getting myself into a state where I'm not going to panic in the exam room. I'm just going to be cool, calm and focused, deliver, and then I can relax. Having that and understanding that that's the way you're going to do it and being clear about it. I think a lot of students fall into this category where they don't decide what they're going to do. They just say, and I get it the whole time, they just say, hey, I want to do well in my exams. I want to, have a really good system. But they don't actually plan out the system. And this is your opportunity to say, okay, before the exam, this is what I'm going to do. In the exam, this is how I'm going to lay out my stuff. My pencil case is going to be here on my desk, my water, my liquid thinking. Got a bit here. Here he is. It's going to be in a certain place on my desk. I'm going to look up at the clock every 20 minutes. I'm going to write it out in the top right hand corner of my paper so I remember. Having all these safeguards in place, it's just going to make you really able to just pull out consistent performances. And that's one of the things that I think is the biggest thing with these new GCSE exams, because there's so many exams you got to take. They're tough, right? Because I can tell you this, from taking A-levels to uni exams, the volume of different subjects you have for GCSEs is the most you'll ever have. And that's tough. That creates a lot of scope for lack of consistency, for up-down performance. Because one, the subjects are different, right? I have a lot of people who say, I'm just not that good at maths, but I'm good at biology and I'm good at art. There's lots of subject ranges. At uni, you're just studying one subject. Okay, different modules, but essentially it's one and the same thing. And the other thing is just the volume of exams. How do you create that consistency where every time you're able to get down what you know and keep the momentum up? It's an absolute marathon. I've got some students who are taking 20, 25 exams, huge amounts of exams in a short period of time, 2, 3 a day sometimes. It's a lot of stuff to get around, and you got to have a system in place to do it. I think the third thing you need to understand about the mock exams is don't worry about the detail. There's going to be so many students who sweat the detail. They're worried about the 5 marker, trying to get for say 3 marks, you get for 3 marks out of the 5, you just got to mention basic points, and then the final 2 marks are for the really niche detail on a specific thing you've mentioned. Don't worry about that for the mock exams. Just worry about the foundational stuff. Otherwise, you're just going to get distracted and stop spending your time on where most of the marks are. It was something that I noticed in a lot of people that I was at school with. They could tell me really, really niche things about each subject that I didn't know. I was like, wow, you're A-star candidate, because it was obviously a different grading system back then. It would be a 9 now, or like a 9's a double A-star, isn't it? So it would be a good grade. And I'd say, whoa, that's good knowledge. I don't know that, and I'd feel a bit inadequate. But the thing is that they didn't know the fundamentals. They just knew that niche fact. I don't know, they just read it in a book, I suppose, and remembered it. They didn't know the foundation that you need, the basics of the subject, like who is the main historical character in the period that you're studying, for example. What are their beliefs? Why do they plug into the rest of the subject? Understanding that unlocks so much of the rest of the syllabus and allows you to understand it all very easily and simply. So think about that. Don't sweat the details for the mock exams. Focus on the basics. Figure out where the most marks are. What are the biggest topics on the syllabuses or subjects that you're studying, and revise them. Okay, cool. So I've told you like the theory about how you want to try and approach your mock exams, but what does it actually look like in practice? How do you do this? So using the tools to identify the key stuff. We've spoken about them. The mark scheme, the past paper, the syllabus. The other thing you want to get in there is your model answers and, of course, the revision guide in the middle of everything. Making sure, I think I actually posted a video on that the other day on YouTube. Check it out. It's all about the revision guide playing that central role to everything you do, and having the other stuff, the mark scheme, the past paper, the syllabus, the model answers, feeding into all of that. So you go to where the bulk of the information is and you cross-reference it to the other stuff to check, is it on the exam? Because a lot of people will revise stuff that isn't going to come up. You're wasting time if you do that. Is it on the exam? Does it carry a lot of marks? And is it in that kind of foundational category? So does it, by understanding that, does it allow me to understand a lot of other things in the syllabus? Because if you don't understand the basics, you're going to get to the stuff that actually gets you into that 8-9 category, and you're not going to be able to, for example, write a linked up essay that makes sense to the examiner. It's just going to be a load of random information that doesn't make sense. And that can be focused on later on, so focus on the basics for now. The other thing is practicing the key revision techniques. So a lot of people say how to revise. What are the key techniques? The 2 key techniques are active recall and spaced repetition. Active recall, really, really simply, and it can be done in so many different ways. It is just testing yourself. Think about it. If anybody ever did a spelling, I know there's loads of people on here who did spelling tests, because I did loads. Think about when you were 4 years old, you did the spelling test. It was look, cover, write, check. That's how you learn stuff. You look at it, you cover it up so you can't see it, you write it out so it's unassisted recall, and then you check it. That's a mini test, and that's all that revision really is. It's reps plus testing, reps plus testing, over and over again. That's the spaced repetition bit where you're testing yourself, but you're spacing it out over a period of time. So for example, let's say you're learning something new, you spend a bit of time, you have the book in front of you, the revision guide, you look at the information, you cross-reference it with the syllabus, the past papers, the model answer, the mark scheme, check that it's actually coming up on the paper, check how significant it is, make some notes on it, bullet-pointed notes, pick out the key information. How are you going to know it's key information? It's on the past paper, it's on the mark scheme, it's on the syllabus, and it's in the revision guide. You write it out in note form, maybe an A4 page of notes under subtopics. Then what you do, take a flashcard. I've got this thing called, in the 7-day exam plan, called the 3-sheet technique, which is basically just a routine I give students to go through in order to revise effectively and feel like they're making progress. So you just have 3 sheets of paper, an A4 sheet, a half A4 sheet, and a flashcard, and you take a page of notes on the A4 sheet under subtopics. You then take the half A4 sheet, you take what you just wrote on that A4 sheet and you condense it down onto the half A4 sheet. And then you take the flashcard and just condense the half A4 sheet onto there. And that is so valuable because that's taking complex information and simplifying it and doing it in a kind of, I see it as like a set of 3. So it feels like almost you're doing a workout routine, and it gives you that nice structure to say, okay, I've actually been able to synthesize this down into information that I can understand now, and I've got it on a flashcard. And if I want to get more detailed, cool, I can look at the A4 sheet of paper. And by doing that, and the other thing I would just want to mention, I mentioned this in the video that I made the other day, when you take notes, I genuinely thought when you take notes, I was focusing on the words, I was just writing the words. I was like, oh, I'm getting so much revision done. And it was weird. I was just focusing on, for example, writing like, the cat sat on the mat. I wasn't actually thinking about what it meant, if you understand that, and really verbalizing what you're writing in your head, saying to yourself, do I understand this? Not just doing it for the sake of doing it. I was just trying to get loads of notes, and I'd do loads of notes, and I'd be like, oh, great, I've revised. You haven't, because you're not verbalizing, you're not internalizing it. You're not really going through it and saying, do I understand this? Focus on the words, focus on the key phrases. Really, really important to do that. So, active recall and spaced repetition. Let's talk about some of the subjects. For example, maths. It's a big one that I think a lot of students slip up on, and it's difficult to revise, right? It just is, because it's not really that fact-based. It's just about questions and having practiced the questions and knowing how to approach the question. So really, if you look at it as a testing side versus a repetition side, maths, you want to be over-indexing in the repetition side. It's just practice questions over and over and over again. The other thing is, find the way that I found really useful is naturally, I am not amazing with numbers. I'm more of a words guy. But I realized that there are some people at school who are just incredible with numbers, like really naturally quite talented. You can definitely get better, because I did, and I improved massively. But what I did is I asked them how they were thinking about things, and they were just thinking about things slightly differently than I was. Having the ability to ask your friends or ask smart people how they're doing stuff is so, so key. Have humility. Be self-aware. Say, hey, I've noticed you're good at this. Please, could you tell me how you're doing it? How are you approaching it? Talk me through it. So maths is about reps. It's about understanding the basic principles of how to approach a question and then practicing it over and over again by doing practice questions. You look at something a bit more fact-based, like maybe a science, with the exception of physics, which is kind of a hybrid of fact and mathsy type questions. But for example, biology, very, very fact-based. You want to be over-indexing in the active recall, the testing yourself. And testing yourself can be done whenever, wherever. For example, I was sometimes just walking to school some days, and I would just say, could I just mention 2 or 3 facts that I know about a specific topic in biology? Could you do it? And the other thing is, you got this thing. This mobile device, you can revise on the move. Everybody thinks you're texting, you're taking notes. You're doing stuff that's helping you with your exams. If you can get creative about revision, there's no one set way. There's the principle of active recall, there's the principle of spaced repetition. If you can get creative with how you're doing these things on your mobile, literally just testing yourself in the Notes app, saying, here's a question, try and write about it. Go back to your books when you come home or when you're at school and just check it over every day, just a little bit. I talk about the gym a lot just because I like staying fit and healthy, but it's the same principle. Repeating it over and over again, over a period of time. You're not going to get, fit, healthy, cracky muscles, all that stuff, whatever you want, by just smashing the gym for one day, 8 hours. You're not going to do that. It's not how the body works, and it's not how the mind works either. It's about small little doses every day, just testing yourself, pushing yourself a little bit further. As you kind of tear the muscle fibers when you go to the gym, in the same or similar kind of way, you are pushing your brain to recall information. You're stretching it, straining it, and it will, adapt. And if you keep on saying, no, this is the information, remember it, look at it again, verbalize it, go over it, okay, let's leave it. Next day, test yourself, do you remember it? Okay, no, go back to it, check it again, look at it, say, okay, that's how it all connects, these are the key words. The next day, do it again. It is just this repetition. There's no magic pill that you can take or special recipe or secret ingredient. It's work, and it's just doing it every day and being consistent. The other thing is the essay subjects. The essay subjects are a tricky one. History and English, for example. I did history at uni, so I did quite like writing essays because I thought it's a nice balance of having the facts. So, for example, remembering the quotations, remembering the bits from the text, and then understanding the basic principles of the subject. So, understanding how in an essay there's got to be some kind of flow. Everything's got to be connected. You need to lay out your thoughts clearly with an introduction. This is what I'm going to speak about. And then each paragraph, that point, evidence, explain structure, it is gold. I used it at uni. Use it for GCSE. Make a point, supply your evidence, your quote, explain it. And then obviously at the end you might try and link it with the other paragraphs. But understanding that basic structure of that's how you approach an essay exam, and then you can have your teacher fill in the blanks with the detail, is really, really helpful. I just didn't understand that. I didn't know that that was how you did it, and I kind of had to just figure it out from asking other people, trial and error. If you can get those techniques under your belt and sorted, it's going to really help you out. So, I think, to wrap it up, I know we've only got about 9 minutes left. I think mock exams, see it as this. It's a huge opportunity to set a marker in the ground and figure out where you're at. If you don't take the opportunity, I think it's a big miss, because there's going to be a lot of people who say mock exams don't matter. And I'm saying they don't matter because the grades don't count, but they do matter because it allows you to figure out where you're at. It allows you to have this source of data, these grades that you're going to get, to say, right, this is what I did. How do I improve? People who don't try in mocks aren't going to have that bar that they can then set the rest of their performance for the year against. And that's what you really want to have. The other thing is, I know that some schools base what exams you're going to be doing in the summer on your mock exam results. So it could determine whether you're doing a foundation level paper versus a higher. And you really want to give yourself the chance to shoot for the stars and really try and go as high as you can. Don't limit yourself by not trying to do your best in the mocks. And honestly, you're going to be able to get into the higher tier as long as you focus on getting that basic level of knowledge right. Again, not sweating too much about the details, because if you sweat too much over them, you will not get that foundation solid and be able to reach, just for example, a 6 and set that as your base level. The other thing is you just have to set up that routine of, so for example, like from now to the mocks, how are you going to revise? Is it 2 hours after school every day? Is it an hour in the morning, an hour after school? What is it? Like, how does it look? And how does it look for each of your subjects as well? Like, you got to know how you're tracking and pacing in each of your subjects. So I see a lot of people actually revising subjects that they like the most and they're the best at, which if in a perfect world you'd say, yeah, do that because you're great at it. But GCSEs is also about having a decent set of exams across the board, because the other subjects do come in handy for other skills in life. Figuring out where you're strong and where you're not so strong and allocating time accordingly to each subject. It's very, very bespoke GCSE. You've got to make sure that you're really looking at how you're set up, how your routine works, how your personal life, hobbies, commitments fit in around your schoolwork, and you figure out that routine. And again, going back to my thing at the beginning, it's a system that you need. It's a revision timetable, a health routine, a nutrition routine, sleeping right, getting your head in the right spot just before the exam, an exam routine while you're in there, checking how many times you look up at the clock, knowing exactly how long you're spending on each section of the exam paper, knowing that if it's a 5 marker, this is how you approach it, knowing that if it's a 10 marker, this is how you approach it. Figuring all that out. I'm going to be doing more videos on this as time goes by, but I want to get this stuff over to you now so you can start thinking about it for yourself, because I find one of the best ways to learn is have a go at things yourself. Like, it's not that complicated if you just go with your gut. Say, right, what would I do? If there were no teachers, if there was no one to tell me what to do, what would I do? And figure it out. And then you can come to me and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And we can jam about, okay, try this, try that. And by constantly testing, by constantly trying new stuff, constantly being willing to learn, you're going to be able to improve your performance. And by the time summer comes around and the exams come around, you're going to be in a really strong position to know what you're doing. You're going to have put in the work over the course of the year, and you're going to have that exam technique down. That's obviously it's a key thing that people often slip up on, because there's so many smart, intelligent students that get into that exam room and just crumble, because it's a pressure situation. It's tough. You got 2 hours, an hour, however long the exam is, to get everything you know from the year down, and you're not sure what some of the questions might be. You have a rough idea, obviously, but there could be a few curveballs in there. How are you going to make sure that you don't panic? You just stay calm, and you have that perspective of, look, these exams are important. Yeah, they're great, but they're not the be-all and end-all. It's the process that matters. It's who you become through it. It's how you become organised. It's what you learn. There are some things in exams that are very, very useful to know. Yeah, not all of it is going to be relevant to your later life, but the basics are going to be relevant, and they're just going to help you figure out, okay, I can learn information, I can do stuff, and I can actually set goals and achieve them. Because for me, exams is one of the first time that I actually properly sat down, set a goal, tried to achieve it, and figured out along the way there's going to be blocks, there's going to be stumbles, trips, falls, and you just got to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going. Cool. So I think, I hope stuff in there is useful. Ask me any questions you have, either on here or the Snapchat's best. And yeah, if any of you are interested in really getting it sorted now, I'm working with students on the half-term offers that I'm doing, the 7-day exam plan. Obviously, I've got a bit of merch in there as well, liquid thinking, stuff like that. The CGP revision guides, get them early. Like, just this stuff that you need. It's an investment that it's absolutely worth making. There's so many people who do retakes, figure out too late what they should be doing or the system they need to be using, or just sitting down with themselves and saying, when am I going to get my act together and figure out what I'm doing for these exams? The earlier you can do this, the better. And yeah, I'm determined to help you through that. So you don't have to go through what I went through, where I was just kind of doing it myself. And yeah, I suppose it was a thing where I wasn't confident enough to ask people how exactly they were doing exams. I did grow that confidence in the end, but the earlier you can figure this out, if you're 15 listening to this, or 14, and you can get these exams and the exam technique, the way you do it, it doesn't change that much when you get older, guys, either. I've got friends who are mid-20s taking exams for financial qualifications, medical qualifications, lawyers, all this stuff. It's the same thing. You take exams, and there's a way to do it. There's a routine you set in place. You figure out what are the key points you need to hit on from the syllabus and the exam, and then you just plug and play. And it's such a useful skill to learn, because it takes away so much stress and anxiety, and it gets you places. It gets you new opportunities, and it opens you up to cool new people, new skills, new ideas, and it's just cracking. That's why I love it. Anyway, if you've got any questions, let me know in Snapchat. Just say, hey, I listened to your YouTube live today, or I tuned in, and I'll try and reply to some of these after. I've got to check out in a bit though, and crack on, get some stuff done before Friday's over. But I hope this was helpful for you anyway, guys. And yeah, just ping me a message anytime. I'm always keen to help out, and have a cracker. I'm checking out.